My name is Dave Hollenbach, the host of From Embers to Excellence, a podcast that explores the many facets of leadership from the perspectives of some amazing people. We discuss the triumphs and failures that have shaped our lives and our leadership philosophies. I've found that it isn't whether we fail that defines us, but when we do fail, how we respond. Leaders dust off the ashes and use their failures as fuel to work harder and as lessons to come back wiser and stronger, more resilient, more determined, and more committed to excellence. Today I'm sitting here with Tom Bull Hill. He is a 30-year veteran of Orange County Fire Rescue, a founding member of Squad 1, Orange County's Special Operations Unit. He is the president of the Firehood Foundation, and he is also pretty well known for the March of the Bull, which he began marching from the 0 mile marker in Key West. This was in 2018. He marched from Key West to Tallahassee to raise awareness for cancer in the fire service, and also to honor some fallen members of Orange County Fire Rescue in the fire service. It grew as he went, and it was his actions that really shined a spotlight on how cancer has been taking the lives of so many firefighters. And as a result, there's been some legislation that now certain types of cancer are recognized as being work-related. So it's a presumptive law that if a firefighter is diagnosed with a certain form of cancer, it would be covered under workers' comp. Now with the Firehood Foundation, he does marches and he teaches classes to bring awareness to cancer in the fire service and to PTSD. And really, it's that silent killer that there's such a stigma in public safety that if you reach out and try and get help, you'll be labeled as weak or broken or something like that, which doesn't help when you're already feeling weak and broken. So Bull, thank you very much for coming and meeting with me. And, we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah, quite a few years.
And, I would like to kind of get a sense of really your background, what kind of led you into the fire service. And really, well, let's start off with where you grew up.
Here in Central Florida, I was born at what was called Florida Sanitarium Hospital. I think it's Florida Hospital now over there off Rollins. But it was a different building in Orlando, but it's the same hospital. Born there, grew up first few years on South Street, which is not a great area now. We lived above a appliance store. Then my dad got a better job and we moved out to Pine Hills, and we lived behind the prison farm that used to be there. You'd hear the alarms going off every night. I remember that. And then got a better job, and we ended up moving over to Maitland, back on those old dirt roads. Nice. That's where I'm mainly from, probably 6th, 7th grade to high school.
Where did you go to high school at?
Bishop Moore.
Oh, okay.
Bishop Moore.
Yeah.
And then I ended up going out to college to play football in Yankton, South Dakota.
Wow.
I wanted to get out of Florida.
All right. So I'm guessing you played football in
Yeah,
high school,
yeah.
and I'm guessing did some weightlifting.
Yeah, about my junior year, we got introduced to weightlifting. Back then, it wasn't very big at all. I think they had a universal machine was all. Well, that's all they had in the little. They had a 15 by 15 like bunker at Bishop Moore then. We had a practice field, didn't have a stadium then, any of that, and got turned on to it then. Really liked. Um, I don't know if you want to say the pain that it brought, but it got me out of a lot of stuff I had gone through. And when I'd get in the gym, I'd just get lost. And then I did a report on bodybuilding my junior year in high school, which led me to Orange Avenue Gym, which back then it was full blown bodybuilders, bikers, and professional wrestlers. And when I walked in there, I was 115 pounds, and these guys were huge. They had a boxing set up in the back. Some guys got mad at each other.
So I'm wondering, were you working out there same time as Rick Segrist?
That's how I got introduced to the fire department between Mike Kelly and Rick Segrist. I was bouncing and doing bodyguard work at the time at night, and then doing construction during the day. And I had been going to Orange Avenue Gym since I got back from South Dakota, and ran into him one day, got to be friends, and they talked me into going to the academy. They said you'd be great at this, and that's how I got introduced to it. Really, I used to see the fire trucks, but never think about it. I my goal was to play football. That didn't work out because of injuries during tryouts with the pros, and then my goal was to be an undercover law enforcement. And then Rick and them grabbed me.
So what did your mom and dad do for work when you were growing up?
My dad never had a college education, so he was more of a bookkeeper than an accountant. And I think his last job that stuck with him was in the brewery in Orlando. There was a beer manufacturer down there, and that was his main job. And then my mom ended up being working as a cook in the schools, and then became supervisor. So she was like the main breadwinner of the house.
You mentioned that you would get into the weight room and just kind of lose yourself. Um, you talk a little bit about maybe your experiences growing up, kind of things that shaped you. Um,
Um, uh, Truthfully, when I look back at it, and I really lived mainly in a dream world up until about 40. Till about 40, and that's when I went to get some help that I thought was more alcoholism. Driving back from 9/11 was when I said I'd had enough of everything from years of stuff. Not really the calls in the fire service. Yeah, they haunted me. But I think it was more of the trauma in the childhood that I didn't realize was trauma. It kind of formed me to think I was less than and not worth shit. And, started drinking when I became a fireman. Nah, actually a little bit before I became a fireman. Take that back. But it got worse in the fire department. And went to treatment for alcoholism, and within 2 to 3 weeks, I guess my actions and words spoke louder than anything else. And the person that ran it said, she called me in her office. She goes, "You may be an alcoholic, Bull, but you're damn sure suffering from severe fucking trauma exposure throughout your life. And we think that's the problem." And I laughed. I said, I don't have any trauma exposure. said, that's what happens to soldiers. And she goes, no. She goes, we're finding out for these last 15, 20 years, it's high in the fire service because of years and years and years of doing it. And the people that become first responders usually have, there's a certain percentage, she said, usually have some kind of trauma never dealt with during their life. And they get into this kind of profession because of that trauma, which I never knew that. I thought I just got into it because I thought it was cool, you know.
Mm.
But through that, through the treatment there, when I finally gave into it or surrendered, as you would say, I had to look back on a lot of shit that I had stuffed that I thought was normal, you know. Grew up Catholic, still love the church. Don't go as much as I should, but you know, I was raped, sexually abused, whatever you want to call, 3 to 4 different times. And what happened was I had stuffed it so much that because you can't talk to your parents about it because they're the ones sending you to the priest to stay. And actually, I had pretty much dealt with all that pretty good until I think I was home from college, and the one priest got brought up in charges by 12 other of the high school kids. And she brought the paper into me and said, can you believe this? This is a great guy. This is happening to him. And I couldn't answer. She, to the day she died, she never knew.
Wow.
Couldn't tell her, you know. And treatment, they had to do hypnotherapy or something where they put you almost out to get you to start talking. And most 3 of the times I couldn't get through them, even being out. I would get to a certain point, and one of them, you know, still vivid, where I can remember looking out like stained glass windows. It's kind of dark around you, and I feel this guy breathing on my back, and then I just go blank. And through, you know, years of talking to these therapists, they said that, in fact, the one said she hopes I never remember it because it could be bad. But they said growing up that way, you know, it started young, preteens, that that your body learns to stuff these things away that you may never get to the root of why you're acting like you are until you go through something like this. That's why people drink, drug, and they don't really know why they're doing it, she says, you know.
Yeah.
But through that, and then once I got jumped by some guys, I think I was 12, and tied up in an old abandoned building. And everything goes blank after that, still to this day. But I remember some guys coming in that I knew that lived in the area that were older than me. Back then, Maitland was just woods, a lot of rednecks. There was nothing, you know. There was Eatonville, and there was Maitland, and there was woods. So it was pretty rough. Some guys came in and caused some ruckus and got me out. They knew I was in there. And then I can remember I went to work at 14 or 15 in the summers in a steel yard in Apopka. And the days I wouldn't work there, I worked at Smith Lumber. These guys were pretty rich in town, good family. So they took me on, and we worked on what was called the truss yard, where you build the trusses for houses. Mm. And back then, when we transported the trusses on the back of these flatbeds, someone rode on the back and the trusses with wood poles, and you push the power lines out of the way where you're going down some of these roads to transport them. And I was young enough, like I said, probably somewhere between 14 and 16. It was before college. And never been in any real physical confrontation, you know. Back then, you didn't have the internet, so you didn't talk shit.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't talk back to your parents. You didn't talk back to anybody that was older, because you get your ass beat. And this guy that was driving the truck, Wayne, he's probably in his 30s or 40s, a biker, but real nice guy. And we're going through these orange groves back then by Old Winter Park Hospital. We're back where they're all subdivisions now, but they were all orange groves and woods then. And somebody was building a house way back in the middle. Come pulling in, and I'm pushing tree branches out of the way, and you know, they're a large truck. They're, 30-foot bed or whatever. And all of a sudden it comes to a stop, and I hear this ungodly screaming. So I'm climbing to get out of the trusses, and jump back, jump down, and I look, and I'm like in shock. You know, I'm 5'11", probably 90 something pounds, and there's these what looked like then 5 or 6 huge construction workers, and one guy was kicking Wayne in the face in the dirt, and another guy was hitting him with a board. So I ran to grab him, and 2 guys grabbed me and picked me up, put me up against the truck, and said, "If you do anything, we'll kill you right fucking here with him." And the truth is, I was shitting my pants because I didn't know what was going on. Next thing I know, in my memory, is they're done. He's laying there all crumpled up. The way I see it now, you know, part of his face was gone, but it was just from being beaten. And I kind of picked him up. I didn't know what to do and started walking. I couldn't drive. So I started walking back. These guys are laughing, walking off, and I'm just trying to figure out what I just went through. And I'm trying to get him out of there. And what happened is that when I came out of the Orange Groves, the hospital was right there across the street. So a lady stopped the car and helped me get him into the hospital. And I'm sitting there, and she's asking me, "Man, are you okay, kid?" You know, all this. She's worried about me. And I said, "I think so. I just don't know where I am or how to get home." And she actually worked at the high school I ended up going to. So she knew, I think, my parents or someone in the neighborhood. So they got me a ride to come back. So this was like back to back to back, you know, every few years, something. And I'd forgotten really about a lot of the stuff. And so by the time I got into high school, I had never played football, played baseball and basketball back then. But as soon as I got in the weight room, it was like not game on, but things were different. It was like I could get bigger and I could get stronger. This will never happen again. And then what was sad was on the football field, I took out a lot of aggression. So I was, you know, I did well in football only because you could hit people. And that's what got me into college to play. And then I had a tryout with the Jets, the Giants, and the Patriots. And South Dakota, snow on the ground, me being from Florida, still hadn't learned to stretch good enough, and I was running the 40 and ripped my hamstring and stock muscle. Never heard from them again.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's how I ended up back here.
You get on with Orange County, like after meeting Mike Kelly and Rick Segrist. And I'm guessing at that time when you were working out at the gym, it said Orange Avenue?
Yeah, it was called Orange Avenue Gym back then. It was a pit. In fact, they weren't going to let me train there because I was just a little shit. So over in the corner of the gym, they had those pre-made barbells that you see in the gym that go from like 10 pounds to 100 pounds. And they got an old bench and put it over there and said, when you can get through the whole stack and squat and bench the 100 pounds or 110, whatever it is, you can come out here and work out with the rest of us. So that was one of those goals I had, and I'd be in there every day.
That's pretty freaking cool.
It's cool now, but at the time, you were embarrassed to walk in there.
Yeah. So you get on with Orange County in '85.
Yeah.
And so what was your first fire station that you got assigned to?
Well, I was supposed to be at 41 with Bill Comby. I think I worked 3 shifts there. And back then, a senior guy, if he wanted to be at that station, he could just take it, and you'd have to go fill in where he was. So Wally Leach, you remember Wally wanted to be at 41, and he was at 71. So I ended up going out there to 71, which ended up being good. I was there about a year and a half, and Herbie Calloway was my lieutenant, Malcolm Wirtz, the engineer, the old man Angel Gonzalez, Dave Harper, all those guys. So it was a good crew.
Yeah.
And we were playing basketball one day, and I knocked, is it Malcolm Wirtz or John Tom Chesky? One or both. I think it was Tom Chesky ended up knocking out in the basketball game on accident. And someone else got hurt. And that's when Harper said, man, you play basketball like a bull. And it stuck from that day forward. My mom used to get mad when she called the station. She'd ask for Tom Hill. I don't know who Tom Hill is. Okay, is Bull there? Oh yeah, he's right over here. She goes, I gave you a name. Oh.
So tell me about how you ended up being one of the founding members of Squad 1.
Well, I had a lot of construction work from my early teens to being a fireman. I mean, from 9th grade, 8th grade, I was either doing work in the steel yard or construction at the lumber mill. Had worked on vehicles for a while. That's how you grew up then, doing that stuff. You didn't work in stores or computer shops or whatever. You had to do manual labor. And when they came out with what they were doing, I put in for it. And Charlie Walsh, I think it was Buffy Green, and them would ride up as battalion chiefs, and they came over to interview me one day at 71. And at that time, I was in real good shape then, bigger. And they said, man, we'd like to see if you can be on the squad with us. And even though I only had 3 years on at the time. So what ended up happening was I got picked to be on the squad as one of the 3 firefighters and got moved to 51. And that's where the whole program started. We were there probably 2 or 3 years, if that long. And then everything got moved to 50. But man, for those first 5 or 6 years, every shift and probably 1 or 2 days a week, all we did was train. And then Hurricane Hugo came, 89. And I had relatives, the girl I was married to, getting married to. Actually, we were married at the time. Just got married. Her relatives all lived there in Somerville, Charleston. So I took time off to go up there, took generators and all that, and found out that they were looking for firefighters. And that's when we made our first TRT team, or whatever it's called now. And they sent 14 guys to Somerville, and we actually ran the department for 14 days. They sent all their guys home but one who knew the routes, and their guys went home because it was devastated up there. It was bad. Yeah. And we manned all the stations with one of their guys for, I think it was close to 14 days. And ran all their calls, did everything. And then came back, and that's when the squad started taking off.
So at that time, what kind of training did you guys do? Because there wasn't really
There wasn't the training you had now. It was grassroots, I guess. You know, when it got to the hazmat, the chemical stuff, a lot of that we went through. Is it Homeland Security? It was military that taught us that stuff. 51 used to have the old chemical truck.
Right.
And I knew nothing about hazmat. And we had some old shit that I don't even think worked very well. So they ended up, changing that out. But Steve Kidd was, very good with the vehicle extrication, well known around the country. Did a lot of that. I can't even remember now who was doing our rope training, but that was something else. Starting to do high level rescue, because I wasn't used to that. I thought I was always scared of heights, but I found out it wasn't the height. I was more scared about falling. So another story to go with that, I said, well, to overcome that, I have to bungee jump. So I went with Joe Bob Hernandez one day, like an idiot, and went out to Kissimmee when they first started this. And I'm watching people, and they're screaming and having a good time, and I'm shaking. I'm 220 pounds muscle, and they're laughing at me, and I'm thinking, I can't do this. But I know I have to overcome the fear. So I get on the scale, and for some reason it says 200 or 205, and I'm going, man, I weigh more than that. So they take you up on this crane, and they lift it 150 feet or whatever, and they Velcro these rubber bands to you. They look like rubber bands. That's all. It's not like a harness and everything. It's Velcro to my ankles. And the guy said, all right, I'm going to count to 3 and you're going to jump. And he goes, 1, 2. And I said, fuck you, I'm not going. And I grabbed him, and he goes, man, you better let go of me now. He goes, we won't have this. And I said, well, what do I got to do? He goes, just jump. David, I jumped, and they had a water pit to protect you at the bottom. My head went in the water. It was horrible. But that's when I knew the scale was off. Because supposedly they weigh you, and then that's the amount of cord they put on you, so you'll spring. Fuck me. But I tell you, from that point on, hook me up to a rope and go over the edge. It didn't bother me anymore.
Yeah.
Because you had control.
Right.
You had control. That was great. Then we started cave-in stuff. I excelled pretty good at everything except for the diving. And when I dive, man, I get massive headaches. And went to the doctors for that and found out that I had like 70% blockage in one ear and 20 in the other. So to clear was at 10 feet you clear, and then at 15, 20 you clear. Could never clear. And so I was allowed to still be on the truck, even though if it was dive, I was mainly just doing the accessory stuff. Thank goodness.
Yeah. You're one of the founding members of Squad 1.
Yeah.
And then at some point, you moved out of Station 50. And where did you go from there?
Okay, so what happened was before I moved out of Station 50, my drinking had escalated. I can honestly say I never drank on duty, but I can't really, I think it was after my divorce. Divorce just, the last thing I wanted was to ever get a divorce. But, I was a piece of shit. I'd either work I worked a side job. I hired out of doing cowboy stuff, or I did construction with another firefighter almost every day. So I was gone all the time. And it was common that we drank in both jobs. Never drank on duty, but it got to the point where, I'd stay out and I might be drinking at 3 or 4 in the morning and go to shift. So she had had enough. And right before 9, was it before 9/11? No, yes. It was probably a year or so before 9/11. Trying to get this straight now. Was when I got hit by lightning on duty. I don't know if you ever knew about that.
No, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, we're on a dive scene, and that's back when the sheriff's helicopter would fly. Yeah. You know what's funny is I met Travis Brown the other day to pick up his helmet, shield, and a pass tag to go on the new pack, the honor pack for survivors, guys that are fighting cancer. I can't wait to get that thing going. So he remembered it. He brought it up when we were at lunch. He was on another shift. And so what happened was we were on a dive, and the sheriff's helicopter was somewhere in the air, and they said everyone needs to get out of the water because lightning in the area. So we were in Pine Hills, and we had gone from there to Station 30 to fill up. And looking down the road, you could see just lightning popping everywhere. And I think it was either a tree or it actually hit the telephone pole a good ways down the road, and you could see it chase it, And it hit so much that probably 100 feet in front of us, a tree branch came out in the water, big round one. And cars were swerving to get around it. So Charlie said, get your ass out there and move the tree branch. And not thinking, I ran out there, grabbed the branch, went to move it, and that's the last thing I remember. And what happened was Alan Gardner ran out and got me after it, pulled me back, and Tom Ruffin was crying. And he goes, are you alive? And I said, yeah, what just happened? He said, I think you got hit by lightning. What they found out was they heard either they heard a boom and saw just a big ball of light, or vice versa. I don't remember it. I just remember shaking. And supposedly when I grabbed the branch, the fat end of it hit a guard pole. The guard rail. The other part was in water. So when they got me back to the station, now we didn't even go to the hospital. We went back to the station. And I said, I gotta use the bathroom. When I went in there, I found I had wet my pants, everything else. And I had like those burn welts on my hands and my feet. So I went out there to tell them, and then they took me to the hospital. And the doctors there, actually one of them prayed over me in the hospital, and the other one was saying, well, you have first degree block, looks like you're getting secondary block, we're going to put you on some medications. And usually I don't see people living from this, so we don't know what's going to happen. That's basically what they said. They said for the years to come you might have problems. So I was out on light duty for a while. And I think that's when 9/11 came. So I go to treatment, and everything changed after that. And then one of the things I forgot, I didn't forget, I need to mention it too, was that, you asked me about my dad, was that I'd never seen my dad sober in his whole life. So if you've ever grown up with an alcoholic and you look back on it, you learn certain traits. Like I learned to duck all the time. If there was a loud noise, I'd duck. I'd turn my head, this and that, because his hand was always swinging, And I thought it was just me being fearful growing up, but it was, from what I was told, a reaction to it. And there was he tried to kill me twice. And the last time was one of the worst was when I was in high school. I had taken I didn't really take her out on a date. Her mom took us out on a date. Went out with a girl. Her mom brings us home. And I invite them both to come in. And my dad is shit-faced, sitting in his chair. Like I walk in the door, he's over there, and I'm like, oh, fuck. And my mom's sitting on the couch, just kind of shaking her head. And so I introduced him, and he says something really smart-ass. And I said, well, we're going to go. So I walked him out and apologized, walked back in. And I don't know what I said, but it pissed him off enough to start yelling and swinging. So I said, I'm leaving. And I left. So I get down to the end of the street, and now I'm crying, thinking, where the fuck am I going to go? You know, I'm not driving yet, so I must have been 15. I don't know. Maybe I was 16 and I wasn't allowed to have a license. But I get back in, I walk down the hall, go in the bathroom, and next thing I know, the door comes off the hinges, and he grabs me by the neck, and he said, if I could, I would fucking kill you. And I can remember saying, I wish you would. Just do it. And he just stormed off. And I can remember walking out to the living room and Mom's still sitting there. And I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on in this house, you know? But through treatment, you know, I got to look at all this. When I got back from all of that, I went on light duty. And they were actually going to fire me because I had gone to 9/11 thinking I had got it okayed. I was told it was okayed. In fact, one of the other lieutenants that was going to go, and he said he had 7 guys that were going to go too, were going to meet me somewhere along the way up there. Well, I get to New Jersey and I get a phone call that I'm AWOL. So that was part of the whole 9/11 experience that I got to know. I didn't give a fuck after that. So when I drive home, do the treatment, go in to get fired, and it's Chief Lyons, Rita Realms, whatever her name was, and a couple other people when they fire you. And all of a sudden, Jerry Polk walks in, the union president. I said, what are you doing here? He goes, for you. I said, well, what's going on? He goes, I only show up when people get fired. He goes, you weren't allowed to go. He goes, what are you going to say? I said, well, I'm going to fucking tell them the truth. I can't lie anymore, you know? I'm out of treatment. I'm sober. I'm not allowed to lie. I don't want to go back to drinking. So I go in, and they're giving me all the rights, and then I can remember, you know, part of it line saying, you know, you're the best fireman that I know of in my career. Except you've really fucked up now. And he goes, there's nothing else we can do. And it was weird because all of a sudden Jerry goes, Chief, just a minute. Can he have a minute just to talk? And he goes, yeah. So they turn off the tape recorder because I guess they have to record everything. And he said, Bull, just go ahead. And I can, part of it that I remember is telling them that I've been an alcoholic this whole time, been drunk. And, you know, I'm ashamed of what I've done with the department, and then supposedly went on for 5 minutes. I don't know what happened, but it felt like something moved in that room. He turns back on the recorder and he says, okay, so where would you like to be stationed at when we leave here today? And I looked at Jerry and he goes, I said, can I go back to the squad? And he goes, do you really want to go back there, or would you like to? And then he said, how about you drive Chief Growley around for a month or 2? And then we'll figure it out. I walked out of there. I look at Jerry and he goes, well, I don't know what the hell just happened in there, but whatever you said worked. I said, is this done? I got my job? And he goes, Not only that, you're driving the chief around. He goes, just be happy, it's over and it's done. It was amazing. And I think for me, the best part was I didn't make up any fucking story. I told the truth. And drove Chief Browley around, did a lot of work. Started that air canister campaign where I went to every station and set up the air bottle fills. We didn't have it then. Welded a device for the not the Indian packs, but the floating porta tanks. So I made carts with the big heavy duty tires that welded and folded up, went on all the tankers so you could take them. Got to do a lot of those projects. And then I was at a training class in Brian Morrow. We had known each other, you know, through years of running calls when the squad would run with 70. He asked me, he goes, well, I'm out at 28. He said, I'd love for you to be my fireman. You take a break from the squad. Take a break from 50. You've been there almost 18 years. You need a break. And I couldn't think of going anywhere else, you know. And he goes, it's a shithole here. You'll love it. You get a lot of fires. And I thought, 28? No one's ever heard of 28, you know. Sure enough, man, that place, we ran our asses off. It was like a small Station 50, you know. Yeah. But I tell you the truth, Dave, I drove my truck up to the trailer in the overhang, which was 28, and I got out of my truck and walking across the parking lot to the trailer, it was like, I can breathe. And I didn't feel any stress at all. Like, I'd go into 50 and I'd be a ball of knots. And I never realized it during those times there. But as soon as I walked up to 28, it was like, I'm living again. And so being on, you know, a normal engine crew was just fantastic. Especially being on there after having trained as much as I had. You know, you're kind of ahead of the game on a lot of things. So it made it nice. So that's how I ended up at 28.
And you were at 28 for how long?
Oh, probably 8 years. I was at 26. 7 years. Something like that. And I was there enough to where my body was, from the lightning strike. 4 years after the lightning strike, I'm doing that P90X program. I'm trying to do that fucking yoga every Thursday. And I can bend one way, but I can't bend the other. And to find out this through that yoga, I don't know. I knew my back had really started bothering me. So I was squatting one day at the gym, and the owner was spotting me, and all of a sudden my back and hip gave out, and I just collapsed. And he said, I'm taking you right now to his chiropractor where they do x-rays and everything. And he says, while you were squatting, I could tell that one hip was higher than the other. So through that, they found that my back had been shattered. And the chiropractor showed me the x-rays. He said, it looks like you have an 80-year-old back, your lower back. And it's got a C in it. And I said, I've never been in an accident. I said, the worst accident I've been on was when I got thrown off a horse and he ran over me. He goes, well, that wouldn't have caused this. And what they came to figure is that through the lightning strike, it had shattered and fused it, because he said your lower back is fused too. So it explains why every time I tried to go to a chiropractor, it would be severe pain if they tried to stretch or pop it. They couldn't do anything, and I couldn't tell them what happened. It was through that I found that. So my back had been bothering me, and at 28, my knees got worse and worse. And I don't know if it's all of the accumulation of football, construction, cowboy, and this, or getting in and out of the fire truck, but I had 2 knee surgeries the meniscus repairs, and they had started putting the rooster collagen or whatever in your knees back then, and it got to so bad to where I had to wear knee braces under my bunker gear that I asked for light duty. So that's how I ended up at the Fit Pit. And at the Fit Pit, on those 8 hours, people started coming in and asking me to train them. And then that turned into them asking me if I wanted to start a program down there, which went from a 20 by 20 area we were given to really getting 2,000 square feet. You saw that by the time we left.
Yeah.
That was probably the hardest job in the whole fire department I had at the time. Trying to convince people we needed it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome.
Oh, it turned out to be, to me, it was safe ground for anybody. If you were a chief or a firefighter, you know, they had me write up like a mission statement. It was that you leave your badge at the door. When you come in here, this is common ground for everyone. And I tell you what, I made a lot of good friends there. I saw people that would never even talk to each other start hanging out there and training together.
Yeah.
And it became something that I was really proud of. And then to have Rick, he came to me one day and asked me about, could we do something for, I think it was the Heart and Lung or the Heart Association to raise money. And he said, you think we could come up with a CrossFit thing? And that's when me and Dave Coughlin put together that 343, which turned out to be a really good event.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so freaking cool, man.
Yeah, turned out good.
Yeah.
And that's when I had, I ended up, that's how I met Shaky. You know, he was on, I think they had 3 squads by then.
Yeah, no, they did. He was on squad 4 at a 42.
42. And we didn't really get along because he was pissed. A few of the squad guys weren't happy that I had left the squad and went there. And Shaky was one of the ones that would voice it, and he'd say, you know, you're wasting all your talent down in this fucking hole in the wall. And I said, this is the best hole in the wall there is in the county. You need to bring your fat ass down here. And we'd go back and forth, you know. And then we started talking every now and then more because he was in training. And he came to me one day, and I'll remember to this that he says, he walks in, he goes, hey, Bull, I need your help. And I said, man, you look great. What have you lost? He says, 30 pounds. I said, well, whatever you're doing, it's working, man. He goes, I'm dying. I've got cancer, and I want you to help me. And I started bawling. I said, I don't know what to do. I can't relate. I talked about my dad. I don't even talk about him. It's funny, I had a total reversal about him in treatment. Well, I'm finally honest. Remember how I told you we didn't talk bad about our parents? Never once did I back talk to him. I broke his ribs one time. And I was mad at him, but I made it look like I was hugging him. And I busted the shit out of his ribs. But other than that, I would never back talk or anything because we just didn't do it. Yeah. And when you went to talk to somebody about it, you didn't talk bad about your parents. Yeah. But I finally had to be honest about it in treatment. And let me tell you something, man. That's why I love the steps so much. Is that they will position you in a way that if you don't get relief, you're not being honest. Yeah. And that's why a lot of guys in AA still have to go to me, still have to have problems drinking. It was like when this happened to me, God, however you want to look at it, removed the desire to drink. Removed it. 20 years not wanting to. Even with all this pain. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe with my trauma exposure, you know, when I start talking to people, experts, whatever you want to call them these days, and tell them a little about this, they're go, you're still suffering from it, you know, with that kind of being raped and that. And I said, I don't suffer from it. Oh, the steps. And I said, listen, isn't the whole goal to find a relationship with a power greater than yourself that you can trust every day? It's either that or I'm going to have to go see a doctor every day, or I'm going to have to take a medication. It's not that it's miraculous. It's that I think that's what we were created to do. And to be able to talk to someone else. My idea is, we talk about God and the Bible, all this. You really study on your own if you want to. Like, let's say the New Testament, since they say that Christ wiped out the Old Testament. I guess the New Testament's the new whatever. But you take those guys that either Christ used or that God used in the Old Testament, every one of those motherfuckers was a whore or a murderer or a drunkard. And what did they do when they got their lives turned around? They took care of people. They gave of themselves. And I think that's one of our missing things, is that we think we can take the past that we were so bad in and hide it, where someone could take what you went through and you could share it however you have to share it, like I do with my addiction and stuff, and they can go, fuck, I'm right there where they are. How else do they connect with you, And we don't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the fire department's missing, much less everyone else. And when I started an AA program, it was called Heroes Anonymous, because I hate the word heroes. And it was on the wellness site for 10, 16 years. So when guys would have problems, they'd either reach out to me or a chief or a lieutenant would send me someone. I forgot about that too.
So you were talking about Shaky, and when it's funny because
see, I didn't know him very well because being at the Fit Pit, being at 28, and everyone, what a great guy, what a funny guy, what a fuck up, what this and that. I never got to experience that part of Shaky.
Yeah.
I got to experience a guy that was scared to death and would do anything to stay alive. I got to know the guy that would fucking cry on my shoulder. I mean, it changed me from not liking him, being an acquaintance, to falling in love with him. I mean, fuck, I'd sleep with him during the day when I was his last few days. I'd feed him, we'll shower him. It's like, fucking don't go. And then come back and take care of JP a little bit was just, that's what that really got me. And I realized a lot of mistakes I had made over when Todd and Mark got killed. I don't know if you know about that.
Yeah.
Well, I was floated out there that day.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I called in sick so I could drink.
Oh, no shit.
I didn't know about it. Called in sick so I could go to work. Cowboy or construction. And I just wanted to get drunk. And I came home. I had a beeper then, and it kept going off. I'm like, what the fuck? And so I threw it in the truck, like usual. Drove home, and my neighbors at the time, 60s or 70s, come running over. He goes, oh, thank God. And I said, what's the matter? He goes, I thought it might have been you the way they were talking, but 2 Orange County firefighters, he went to tell me. I fucking broke down. I went to shift the next day. Herbie hugs me. He goes, you don't know how fucking lucky you are. And I said, what? He goes, you were on the float boat. Because remember, they moved everyone around.
Yeah.
And John Garrett got moved to battalion. Was it Todd? Todd got moved up to lieutenant, Mark. And then they floated in the other guy that came on with me. The spaz that got out. He came on with me. He was one of the rookie floaters. So I went to that funeral and I broke down in that funeral. And I swore when I got out of there, I would never go to another fire department funeral. I felt like I had lost a piece of that toughness. If I could cry, I didn't go. My best friends, I didn't go to Ganley's. I didn't go to Highsmith. I didn't go to Priester. All the guys I worked with at 50, I didn't go to any of them. Until I went to Delma's. And then when I started taking care of Shaky, I had a garage set up like a gym. I started pulling out I had 23 pictures posted on my gym wall. All the guys were dead. But I pulled them out, and man, it was weird, Dave. I started seeing them again. Delma and Ganley and Priest are happy. It was like we got this fear that, well, I don't want to see them this way. I remembered them that way because I stuffed them away. And when I pulled them out, that was when it changed. But yeah, I was floated out that day. So when you think about, I don't talk about it a lot, but you think about first the father trying to kill you and the rapes, and then thank God I was a drunk. I don't know what would have happened that day. I feel bad because someone else died, but I don't know what was supposed to happen. But I tell you, that haunted me forever. And that could have been some of the cause. I found out recently, before I send guys to treatment centers, I'll go check them out. Before I tell them to do tests like EMDR and stuff, I'll do it. I'm doing one now called ISIS, where they put the electrodes on your brain, and it can go anywhere from 3 treatments to 20. But I can only get down there for like a couple treatments at a time. And what it does is, I don't know the whole thing, but the way I take it is that it opens up, like a stroke patient like myself, like this side, I have to tell my hand to move. It doesn't just move like this. If I go to pick something up, I knock it over. It opens up those pathways again, so guys can not only remember events, but be able to talk about them honestly. So treatment will work. And I tell you, I've only done one, and for the first week, I slept great. I didn't know anything was happening. You don't feel it. But I'm supposed to go down the week I get back from Joe's for 2 more.
Yeah, I made contact with them. Yeah. So I'll be interviewing him sometime in the near future.
Good. I really want to go through that and have that as a resource, because the only people I know using it are Miami-Dade, Miami, some Palm Beach guys, but I don't think it's covered by insurance. Is the whole thing, because it's something the military, I think he said, is only used until his brother, I think, invented it. So,
talking about Shaky, when all that, when he was diagnosed, it was like when I first started really getting close to him. I became chief of special operations, and my office was down there at training. And whenever the squad guys would come down to do their training, they'd always come into my office and we'd talk and stuff. And this one day, Shaky was riding up as lieutenant, and him and some of the other guys came in my office and shut the door. And as most of those guys do, would give you a hard time, screw with you a little bit. And I was really, really stressed out that day. I
remember those days.
I was going through my divorce and just really on edge. And this is Shaky. He's like, does somebody need a hug? And I'm like, man, you need to back the fuck up. And he pulls his shirt up, ties it in a knot,
Yes.
and takes one of the markers off of my whiteboard and draws a face on his belly with lips around his belly button. And he was like, all right, I guess I'm going to have to give you a kiss. And
That's shaky.
oh my gosh, man. And he wouldn't stop. And so I started laughing. And I'm like, God. And I'm like, dude, get out of here, man.
Please leave.
But it was shortly after that, like, he called out sick. He was talking, like, I talked to him on the phone, and he's like, man, I think I got an ulcer. I got, all this stuff going on. And then, he was still going to work, like,
Yeah.
in massive pain, and
Oh yeah.
and then they figured out what it was, and like, man, you just it's like such an amazing guy, and to meet his family, to know his wife and his daughters, and just how they looked at him, and how much they loved him. And then I went and spent time with him at his house, and just it's just like I I'm grateful to you for all that you did for him, because what you did is like took some strength that most people don't have. Like
I didn't want to do it.
I
Trust me. There were days I didn't want to go. And then I got him to come back to work at training. Remember, he'd come back and work in the office? I set up a cot. So when he'd feel bad, he'd come in the office. I'd close the door, lock it, turn off the lights, and he'd sleep. Set a cover for you. Just so you can keep working.
You spent a lot of time with Shaky.
Yeah.
And you spent a lot of time with JP, and
not as much with JP, I think, because I was just overwhelmed with Shaky. And my mom was dying. So at lunchtime, I'd go stay at the place my mom was in, and then take Shaky home when I had to, or go to his house. And JP, got the lesser of it, but talked to him on the phone more. I still got some of his messages on the phone. All because of that fuck up I made when Todd and Mark died. I said, I'll never do this again. And then I used the excuse for years, I don't want to see him this way. I don't want to remember him this way. When truthfully, it was fear. That how am I going to react in front of him when I see this guy shriveled up? I didn't ever think about them, what they needed, until Shaky. And that's, I think, why I bust my ass so hard to be there when people need it now.
And I remember you raising money, doing the squats.
Yeah, 7 months.
And what I don't think a lot of people know is that you were doing that leading up to your double knee replacement.
I think I squatted, how many days in a month? 30, let's say. So 5 months would be 156, 180. On day 198 was my last squat. Day 199, I went in and had double knee replacement. But the blessing from all that, not knowing this was doing it, was that I recovered in weeks from double knee surgery. They said my legs had been trained so hard, day after day after day, that taking that break, the muscles were growing, they were getting recouped, and within 6 weeks I was driving. within 10 visits at rehab, I had maxed out everything. Even though there was pain in it healing, because they hadn't taken the. Had they taken the staples out? I think they had to by then. Well, at some point, it was like it shouldn't have been healing that quick. But from doing all those squats, not knowing that that's prehab, it made me heal so much quicker. I was back to work in October was surgery. In January, I was back at the Fitbit working with double knee replacement. Is that crazy?
Yeah, man. But the
yeah, no one knew.
You were bone on bone squatting. How much?
I had worked up to almost 475 pounds. Everything was off a box. It was usually higher than parallel because I couldn't get low enough. I still, even with these, I'll wrap them now and won't go below parallel just because I don't want to push them. But I'm up to 450 again on 500-pound deadlift. I wasn't doing that before the strokes. But yeah, no one knew. And that, so I told Shaky he'd talk about his pain. And I didn't know how to experience it. So I thought the only thing that hurts is when I squat. And I think I can squat every day. So what I did was start, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. And at some point, it didn't hurt enough. So I started going heavier, where I'd go 3s and 2s and 1s. And I made sure I did it every single day. There'd be days, and I know you've probably had them, where I'd walk out in the garage and probably for 30 minutes, I'd fucking cry and talk myself out of squatting. It hurt so bad. I wouldn't even get under the bar. And then it was like something went past my head and said, "You dumb pussy, just squat and get it over with. This guy's living with it. You're only going to experience for 10, 15, 20 minutes." So I'd start stacking away on it. And before I knew it, I was done. And the next day, I wouldn't remember that and fucking struggle with it again. But for 198 days straight. But it went from a guy that could squat 315, 320 to almost 500. Yeah, we did the fundraiser. The squatting for Shaky actually I was doing it to experience just the pain he had. So when he would talk to me about severe pain, I would kind of understand it and have empathy. But when he talked to me about dying, thank God gave me the word, someone did, that I'd say, I have no clue what you're going through there. I couldn't imagine. I couldn't say, I know what you mean. Thank God I never said that. It was like, I don't know what that is, but I'll do whatever I have to. So what happened was we got real close, and then they decided to move to Michigan to be near her parents. He bought a car, an old car to work on. Oh, that was sad. Huge house, just an old country home. He had a few acres. They started getting like the mini cows. And I went up there to visit him. And he was actually looking pretty good. He was weaker, but looking pretty good. And then a couple months later, Lisa called and said, Bull, he wants you here tomorrow. The doctor thinks he's only going to be here for the weekend. So that night I booked a one-way flight up there, got a hotel, flew out the next day, and he was actually able to talk. He was a lot thinner, but he could talk to me, couldn't hold down food, he was on a pain pump, and we started sharing about everything, And what was really stood out was not only that he felt like he was letting his family down, He was adamantly embarrassed and ashamed to be a firefighter for the state of Florida. And I still cry over that because a guy that loved the fire service was ashamed to be a fireman because the state of Florida did nothing at that time for firemen if they had cancer. Actually, after he passed away, within 3 days, Lisa was cut off the insurance. Yeah. I was there when she got the phone call. That's how bad the state was, and no one, including our IFFF, whatever they called, even though I love those guys, could do anything about it. And they've been fighting it supposedly fighting it for over 10 years. So one night, I probably had about 3 or 4 good days with him where we talk. I'd take him, I'd help him eat. I wasn't really cleaning him then, just doing stuff around there. And I told him, I said, Chick, yeah, I'm not going to stay up here if I just sitting here all day. I said, I'll go crazy and I'll drive you crazy. And he said, well, we had that acre out there and I've got all the fence equipment. It needs to be the poles going to the ground and 6 strands of barbed wire put up. And I said, good. And started doing that. That was like day 4. And that's a lot of fencing. Well, the fucking electric pole digger didn't work. So I got a fence pole and a file. Fence pole digger and a file. And I'd file it, dig, and then it snowed. It got down to the teens the next 10 days. Bad enough to where I went up there, this Florida guy with a sweatshirt, hoodie, and just jeans and stuff. So they went to a Goodwill and got me a couple jackets. But what happened was one night, Chick, he said, man, you got to make me a promise. He goes, when I pass away, which I will, you'll do something to make a change in Florida. And at that time, I just said, yep, I'll do whatever I can. Not really thinking about it, just appeasing him because he's dying, And then when he got, well, I thought he wasn't able to get up and get around. This is the next day or day after. One of the daughters, Brittany, said, can you take his gear and start hanging it in the barn so we'd have like a memorial. And that's some of the pictures I would share on Facebook. I'm up on the ladder hanging this stuff, and that fucker comes walking out the door. I'm on the ladder hanging his jacket. Already got the helmet. And I hear someone, and I look, and he's sitting in his bathrobe on the stairs in the garage watching me. He goes, that looks good. How are you doing? I said, I'm fucking doing fine. How are you? And it clicked in my head, and I got down off the ladder, started crying. He goes, you all right? And I said, fuck, I'm horrible. I said, how do you think I feel? I said, I didn't like you and you didn't like me a year ago, almost 2 years ago. And I said, I love you now, and I can't believe you're going. And he started bawling, and he got his helmet shield. That's when he gave me his helmet shield. He said, take my helmet shield and just carry it with you everywhere. I never got a helmet shield from anyone. And then from that day on, he was bedridden. Now, I remember the first time I took him to the bathroom, he pulled his pants down. He was trying to fight me. I said, Shaky, we both worked on the trail. I do this with the homeless strangers. I don't care if I see your dick or not, And you got shit on your ass, so I'm going to wipe it while I'm here. And he would fight, as best he could, but finally he just laid there and got to take care of him. So I'd come there in the morning, eat breakfast with him, go work, come in at lunch, and usually take a nap in the bed with him, go back out and work until dinner, until the last day, probably 2 or 3 days before the last day, there were so many people there that there wasn't really room in the house. So they had a camper in the backyard I stayed in, which had no electricity. So in the snow and the cold, I was sleeping in full clothes. It was fitting for Shaky. And I remember it was an afternoon, and I was laying back there because I had done with the fence work, and his daughter comes out and says, "You got to come in. It's bad." So for about an hour, we stood around his bed, and it was horrible because I watched my father die, and I held my mom's hand while she passed, and she just went. They both just went out. I mean, where I could count my mom's breathing from 60 seconds down to 30, down to 10 seconds, then no more breathing. And that guy, Shaky, fought like a fish out of water, like that guppy breathing, just trying to suck in as much air. And I can remember just, okay, you can't cry, Tom. I got one of the boyfriends, got my hand on Shaky's foot, and the rest of the family's around him. And then all of a sudden, man, it's just like, done. And I can hear it today. Both of the girls just scream. And I had to grab the boys and take them out of the room, and then, it was bad, especially watching that happen. And so I stayed up there for, like I said, 3 more days. That's when I learned about the insurance thing, just to help Lisa do whatever I could. Then when I came home, I got the call from JP about that he was pretty much done doing all of the, his body, JP's body was eating him from the inside out. And within a year, you saw what happened to him. He'd go in, get a transfusion, they'd spin it, I guess put it back in, and instead of being it was good for a year, it'd be good for 8 months, 6 months, and finally, when it got to be about a month, he said, "Bo, I'm done." And I'm like, I wanted so bad to just say, well, I can't do anything, but I couldn't. Like I said, I have 2 of JP's messages still on there when he's drugged up, calling for me to come over. And so Shaky leaves me with make a change. And I got his helmet shield in the dashboard of my truck or the Jeep every day, not knowing what that means. And I had made a promise to myself in this Indian about a year before, after I retired, that I would walk the Trail of Tears. I read a book, Walking the Trail of Tears, One Man's Journey. And this Indian in the 70s was the only man at that time that walked the Trail of Tears from Oklahoma back to his home in Alabama. And I read it, and I never knew that history, that the U.S. government forced these people out. It would be like a day like today. They're sitting in restaurants, they're sitting everywhere. This is back when they had homes, they were in suits, everything. They came in and forced them out from where they were that day and started them walking. They couldn't go home and change or pack clothes. They left that day. Most left without their families, their kids went one way. It was horrible when you read it. So I got a hold of the author, and I asked him, I said, "I'm a white guy, I'm a fireman, and I'd like to walk this. Is it cool? Is it all right?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I think that would be neat, and this is what you do." And we were in contact, and I told JP to lift his spirits. I said, "I want you to come out for a day or 2. And that was one of his things he wanted to do. So the last day I saw him was when James Gearing had got the movie Only the Brave got it flown in from Miami or driven up from Miami before it was released so JB could watch it. And after everyone left, he told me he wouldn't be able to walk the trail. That's pretty much when he said he's done. He said, within a month or so, I'm done. And what are you going to say, And he said, I want you to do me a favor. And he said, gave me his helmet shield. And he said, I believe if you walk Florida, something big will happen. And for about a month, I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up. The woman I was with at the time, it was driving her crazy. Because she goes, you're too involved with these guys. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, you don't understand. These people are dying. It was just like that chief I told you about. There was no empathy. I couldn't understand it. And I'd wake up thinking about Ganley and Delma and Priester. And it was like they were saying, it's weird as shit, like, just go out and walk. Just go, So somehow I got the idea of taking my backpack. It was an army backpack, and I put Shaky on it and JP on it and started just walking trails. And one of the guys said, you need to post this and make it public. It was like squatting for Shaky. I wasn't letting anyone know about it until Dawson the Bozeman said, make it public because people will donate to it. So when somebody called me about walking, and I hadn't decided where yet, I started posting it, and fire department family started reaching out. Who was it? Mark Austin reached out about Ganley and gave me his coat patch, his coat name tag, and I put it on the bottom. I called Marion to get Delma's lieutenant's badge, Gail Walsh. I mean, it was like within a month. And then Amanda Marsh called me. She is the widow of Eric Marsh, who was the captain or the job boss of the 19 hotshots that died, Granite Mountain, that the movie was made out of, that I watched with JP. She found out what I was doing. She called me, I remember, sitting in the toilet. She's crying, and she goes, I've never seen anyone honor firemen like this. I said, I'm not honor. Don't get me wrong, I'm honoring them, but I'm just walking. I don't know what else to do. She goes, I want Eric on there. So she sent me, they made 19 patches, and she sent me one of those that I keep wrapped up inside the pouch. And then she sent me another one that I had sewn on leather and put 19 stamps around it to represent all the guys. A captain from 9/11 got a hold of me and gave me John Lynch. Supposedly John Lynch, I read up on him, was a probationary firefighter that went into the towers. The only thing they found of him was the helmet, and that guy brought me his helmet. And I said, I'm not taking the helmet. He said, well, then you're going to take his probationary helmet shield and his truck number. That's on there. And then what happened was amazing is that I drive back and forth to Charleston. This is all happening within a 2-month period. Some firefighters from Savannah reached out. And I probably drove past Savannah 3 times. They had called and said, we want you to pick up some guys. I'd say, okay, I'd be there. And I wouldn't. I'd get too nervous because I didn't know what I was getting into. And then finally one time I said, fuck it, I'm going. So I turned down the van exit and didn't know where the station was, couldn't get a hold of the guy. And I said, fuck it, I'm gonna turn around. So I stopped in a park to take a pee. And I look up where I'm peeing, and the name of the street is Bull Street. And I said, okay, I got you. I'm gonna go find it. So I stopped at a fire station number 3 downtown, and I parked in the chief spot out back. And remember then I had, well, one, no tattoos, had long hair, beard. The retired fireman looked. And 2 guys come out and go, man, you can't park here. I said, just give me 5 minutes. And they're shaking their head because it's downtown. And they're looking at me, and I said, it's a good story, but I gotta get something out of the truck. And I pulled the backpack out, and they're looking at it. And I said, can I walk in? And they said, well, yeah, come on in. So I said, there's a guy from your station that hit me up on Instagram and texted me, didn't call me, or messaged me about coming by. He's got stuff for me to carry. And I told them the story about this. And they said, well, it's none of us. I mean, they were pretty turned off, you know. Who's this guy going to take some of our stuff and carry it around? And so I said, his Instagram name is, and not one of those sons of bitches did social media. So they made 2 or 3 calls. They finally got a hold of the guy, and they said, yep, it's I don't even remember this guy's name. They said it's upstairs in the office, and the tones went off. They got it around. They said, just wait, and I'll be back. Turn around, they come back, and they bring me a shirt and a patch. One for Jimmy Perez, a young guy in his 20s, died of cancer, and one for a chief. And while we're there, they start loosening up, and this captain, he wasn't a captain, an engineer comes over, Damon Durgers, and says, hey, why don't we take a picture out front of the truck with the backpack. I think then it had like 10 things on it. And we're all holding up, there's 5 of us. One's holding the shirt, one's holding the patch, this and that. Took the picture, and the guy said, well, we gotta get in. And Damon's standing off to the side, just watching me. And he goes, Bull, don't go. And I said, what's the matter? He goes, fuck it, I don't want to do this, but I think I got to. So he went on the truck, got his helmet, flipped it over, and took this pass tag off of it and started crying. He said, I'm going to give you Mike Curry. I said, who's Mike? And he pointed at the wall, and I see they have like a assignment board, and Mike Curry and an end date, which was only then, maybe a year ago. And he goes, Mike Curry is a guy I grew up with, kind of like BJ with you, I guess. And he died not long ago. And I said, that's his pass tag? He goes, I took it off his helmet the day he died, and I haven't taken it off mine until now. And I said, I'm crying. I said, I can't take that. He goes, Mike would want to walk with you, and I believe you're doing a good thing. So that's how I got to Mike Curry, right? But what happened was, I didn't know this until I met Mike's mom, is that he was, you know, the Sunday school teacher, he was a baseball coach, he was one of those all-around guys, and he was an avid diver. Well, Savannah had that ferry accident a few years ago where 41 people went in the water. The dock collapsed. He was the first one in. They got all 41 people out. And after they got everyone out, the chief said, will you put your scuba gear on and check for more? And he was putting the scuba gear on and collapsed right there. Massive heart attack. I think he was in his late 30s. So when he told me that story, I'm like, holy shit, this is another, this ain't just, this is another big thing that I'm getting. The Green Hills gave me, Lieutenant Greenhill from Ocoee gave me his belt buckle he wore every day, 30 years on fire department. That's on the top. So as these start growing and growing, I get a call from Mike Curry's mom. She goes, I'm watching everything on Facebook. She goes, I need to meet you. Oh. So with all the people up to now, I've met with every single family member, and it was rough. And so I made a trip up to Savannah, met her at a Cracker Barrel, in 4 hours we're in there. She brought a 4-inch binder and told me every story about Mike Curry. What a guy. So she gives me a shirt, one of his shirts, and she goes, I gotta get going, this and that. And I said, all right, I walked out to your car, and I was getting ready to leave, and she goes, Bull, I gotta ask you one more thing. I said, okay. She goes, I want you to carry Mike. And I said, I don't need anything else. I have this amazing pass tag. She goes, no, I want you to carry Mike. I said, what do you mean? She opens her purse. She took out his ashes. And she proceeded to give me Mike's ashes. And she said the same thing Damon did, that I believe if Mike was alive, he would be walking with you this whole way, and he needs to be with you. So, so many people think that that walk was just this political thing. But there was a lot to it. And I still hadn't figured out what I was going to do. And after that, Ann Mulkey got a hold of me. Lewis Mulkey was the last of the Charleston 9 firefighters that were found. Went to dinner with her. She told me about Lewis. Then went to her house. I mean, total stranger. She invited me over her house at 9 o'clock at night. Showed me pictures of him. Told me about him. And then proceeded to take his helmet down and write "Love Mom" on his helmet shield and had me take it off. He's on the back. So within probably 4 weeks, I decided what I wanted to do was just walk around the perimeter of Florida. It'd take a year. I said, obviously, it sounds like I need to sit with families, just listen to their stories, give them some relief, and carry their. Because I didn't realize the effect that you just carrying something of someone brought them so much joy. Okay, write someone's name and badge number on a mile marker on the thin red line and put a flag. And I found out I did it just to honor a few guys. Like when I was going through, I found out I met Jimmy Perez's mom and dad in Colorado. I got invited up there a couple years ago to bring the pack and escort some widows at the first year after the walk. Then the second year I got invited again before COVID. And I met Jimmy Perez's, the first guy given to me by Savannah. What a good dude. He was like 23, 26, died of cancer. And his parents, they're divorced, separate, they have separate spouses, but what good parents. So one day going to Georgia, I said, I got in trouble by someone in the Keys that was trying to sponsor me for writing on the mile markers. Every mile I'd write the name of a firefighter, like mile 1 was Shaky, mile 2 was JP. And posting them, the sponsor said, don't fucking do that, our names, we're sponsors for